Welcome to Trust the Journey. I'm Melanie Curtis.
And I'm Jason Moletsky.
Thank you, legit, for joining us today.
Yeah, our mission is living and learning, laughing and loving together with you.
We're here to grow and contribute through our practice of openness, honesty, vulnerability, humility, and trust, trusting the entire journey.
Yeah, and on that journey, we often talk about plant medicines, psychedelics, and other avenues of healing. When we do, we are sharing for informational purposes only. We're not doctors or therapists, and we don't promote doing anything illegal.
Inside us all, we have a deep, powerful knowing. We encourage curiosity, healing, and exploration of this consciousness.
Damn straight. Together, our handle is trustthejourney.today. Individually, you can find her at melaniecurtis.com and me at jasonmoletsky.com.
Thank you all again so much for being with us. On to the show. Hello, lovely, beautiful family. Thank you for listening.
Hello,
and
world.
enjoying the reality of our technical situation.
Yeah. The thing about the tech is that everybody gets it.
Yeah.
And like everybody understands. Everybody's like, oh yeah, well, that's like as reliable as unreliable can be. So,
Totally.
Zero stress. Right.
Totally. Actually, my sweatshirt is not only your favorite color, it is also, it says believe in miracles, which it's one of my sweatshirts that I don't always feel, but sometimes I'm like, this is the sweatshirt for today, you know? And actually, I think it's kind of poignant for our subject since we're going to talk about spirituality today, which we haven't necessarily talked about as a focused topic in a while. So I'm interested to see where this goes because I'm definitely in a different place with it than I have been in our past conversations.
Yeah. Yeah. And I went back and I re-looked through our episode list because spirituality came up as a requested topic numerous times when we've reached out to our audience and said, hey, what do you want us to talk about?
Right.
And I went back and I saw it on the list. I saw it in a few different places and I'm like, oh, this has been a recurring ask. Let's check it out. And I went back through our whole list of topics over the last 165 episodes and I did not find spirituality as a specific topic in there. I'm like, okay, let's push it forward. And it's right at the foreground of my day-to-day. Like, honestly, it's amazing how full circle life can be. And the reason why I complimented your sweater and my favorite color is honestly like one of the first places where spirituality really hit home for me, where it kind of like I let it in because it touched me in a place where I felt it in my soul. Was through art and through Alex Gray, through his art, through his visionary art. I've seen his art and I'm like, man, this feels right to me. It feels real to me. What I see in his paintings and in his sculptures and creations, I'm like, this strums a chord in my vibrational being that says what spirituality really is. And that's, of course, my journey. Right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, the spiritual or the artistic expression of a spiritual experience, the actual spiritual experience of creation. Yeah, man, it's an interesting conversation, right? Because what I was meaning when I said I'm in a different place with spirituality versus where I've been in the past is not in a negative sense in any way, but more because, and I've mentioned this more recently, but this is definitely what's occurring in my current existence, is I am in this more feet on the ground in my life, type A, goal focused, like with my people and my everyday existence, taking what I have gotten from my healing journey, my spiritual journey, and now really intentionally being in a more like on earth place, right? I'm not doing, right? I haven't done a ceremony in a while. Like I'll do my annuals and stuff like that. But like why I point to this is that spiritual focus can get boxed out when I am in this more
Where's this?
place. But I feel like this is it's a part of my spiritual path to see what my quote unquote grounded everyday human existence is like. Now that I've been to these more spiritual places in myself, I've done a bunch of healing work. It's like, how does that then manifest in my quote unquote regular living? And so that's been a cool experience for me, even though my official, more intentional spiritual practice is less centered. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. You know, the pendulum is a real thing, right? I talk
Mm-hmm.
about this with Jamie all the time. Jamie's my best friend. We touch base multiple times a week. Phone calls are pretty much a couple times a week right now.
Yeah.
And we're always talking about the pendulum, about how, you know, we can go deep into our spiritual practice, deep into ceremony, deep into a religious experience, deep into like a heart opening, you know, just completely opening ourselves up to the concepts of spirituality. And then after enlightenment, laundry.
Yeah.
You know, that this
Yep.
is the journey of being in the human form. You know, I come back to my life and I go, okay, cool. I've just sat up on the mountain, had my spiritual experience. And if I don't get to work getting myself a fridge full of food and, you know, a tank full of gas and the things that I need to get by in this world, then, you know, I'm going to be sitting here having my spiritual experience like a homeless person, you know,
Right, right,
which is,
right.
which is beautiful if that's what you want to have, you know, but you know, there's this give and take. The pendulum swings back and forth, you know?
Yeah. And I'm enjoying, I feel really quite good about that because I have, for a
Yeah.
number of years have been very much centering my healing journey, my effort to heal, comically applying my type A self to my healing, it's all that stuff, which is hilarious in its own right. But
And you're relating your healing journey to your spirituality, right? Like there's the bridge that I think
yeah.
that is not so obvious until
Hmm.
you're in it, and you're like, to you it sounds like you're just like, yeah, this is the one and the same. But from outside, I'm like, wait, the healing journey and the spiritual journey, these, connect them for me, please.
For me, I think it's because of my strong suits of being a very type A, productive, action oriented, living, doing type of human being. Those are my developed strong suits in my life. Certainly they led me to some of my breakdowns, exhaustion, overcommitment, all kinds of stuff, of course. And so for me, because those were my strong suits, spirituality, like I mentioned just now, I'm aware that it's happening. But when I am more connected and intentionally in those type A versions of myself, that goal-oriented nature that I enjoy and I really value, my spiritual practice and spiritual experience can get boxed out. And so this is something I'm aware of, like where I'm like, I'm wanting to, inside of being goal oriented and whatnot, I want to make sure that I'm not completely jettisoning my spiritual practice. You know what I mean? So there's something there for me. But for me as that type A person, my healing journey basically helped me see that I completely had no spiritual practice. I had no spiritual
Gotcha.
skills. So for me, they're very connected. They may not be as connected for other folks.
Gotcha. So let me touch on that pendulum swing concept again, because I'm hearing something in this, and for some of us, that pendulum swing may be as cyclical as we're born, right? Which is a very spiritual experience. You're literally like a spirit comes into this realm, right? Like
Right.
boink, and like boink from another reality. Whoa, here's a being. This thing's alive, right? So it's like highly spiritual, right?
Right.
And then we move to the other side of the pendulum, which could have no relationship to spirituality at all, and until we die, right?
Yeah.
And then swinging back to the other end and then exiting back through that same doorway, going the other direction, and our life could be as void of the concept of spirituality as it could possibly be.
Yep.
Or that rhythm of spirituality could be so intense that it's just like, we're immersed in a world of doctrine and dogma and whatever form of spirituality we want to talk about. So I just wanted to kind of talk about that cadence a little bit, because you were bringing it up in relationship to like where you're at. You're like, your cadence changes depending upon what cycle you physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually need to be in, depending on the rest of your life circumstances at that time.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm not saying I'm obviously never saying this. That's not saying that's the quote right way to do it. I'm more just saying that's what I'm currently doing. And I'm in the experience real time going, okay, I don't necessarily want that quote unquote spiritual practice to be boxed out. But I also am like, honestly, what is my spiritual practice? Like, I'm kind of meditating. I'm like listening to Sam Harris, who I love, but is that super spiritual? I don't know. So I'm in this state of like almost rediscovering what would I actually want my quote unquote spiritual practice to be in
Great.
this going forward phase of my life. So this conversation is timely for me too.
That's a beautiful question to ask, right? Because how often do we actually prioritize that as a question?
Totally.
When it's up to us as an adult human, where we're not being influenced by an external factor. So that, like that pendulum idea, when somebody dies, all of a sudden that pendulum gets shoved to one side for us, right? Because suddenly we're back in touch with this spiritual journey of like, oh wait, this isn't all just infinitely going on and on. Things kind of have a clear end to them. And so we get yoinked into the spiritual world when somebody dies.
Yeah.
Or when we become ill, right? And we suddenly are present to the edges of our realm. And so I think there's something beautiful about recognizing that realm just as a concept and being like, hey, we're existing in this, sphere of existence, which is utterly temporary. And our relationship to its edges are proximal. And what I mean, like, by proximal is at times, if imagine we're really close to one edge of the sphere, that one edge is really conscious to us, but where are all the other ones? The other ones are like really far away.
Right.
You might not even have any like consciousness of them, but it's all the same idea. I like hearing you talk about this, Mel.
Yeah, thanks. I really, the question percolating in my mind is, I want to know, like, what is your current spiritual practice? Like, what are you doing, right? I learned so much from just your sharing and my friends sharing, you know what I mean? Like, I really value the chosen influences that I have in my life, to your point about what are we making conscious and present to ourselves. For me, it's very much in the people that I respect and admire and love that I allow close to me. And I'm like, okay, what are you doing? So that's what I want to know next.
Okay. Well, let me say thank you, first of all, because gratitude is right at the foreground of my spiritual practice.
That's right.
My core values are love and gratitude. And having those core values are the bookends of my spiritual practice, right? Recognizing that every transaction, every interaction, every evocation, every reception, every movement of energy in this world is going to have a beginning and an end to it, an oscillation to it, that same pendular idea. So my spiritual practice is what I would say very unorthodox, in the sense that I grew up in the Christian church and a variety of different types of exposure to Christianity. And gosh, I learned a lot about values and about how to treat, your brother, your sister, fellow man, fellow woman, and ideas of morals and right and wrong. And I really, really value those experiences. But the storyline of the Christian church never resonated with me. It never stuck. I read the Bible cover to cover while I was a boy,
Wow.
twice.
Wow.
Twice. I've read the Book of the Dead. I've read the Quran. I've looked at different religions and different ideas, and I've ended up kind of doing what I've always done in my life, which is taking collecting as much information as I can from as many valuable resources as possible, and then coming up with my own version of how I see things based on all that information.
Yeah.
And a large part of that has also included psychedelics. It has also included deep exposure to nature and to death and the relationship to life and death, as well as just a being observant to myself and to the world. And so, where do I find myself today? Grateful to even just be able to share my story right now,
Yeah.
knowing the number of times where this journey could have ended is just infinite number of times. So, and knowing that time is coming at some unknown period of time, and so keeping this relationship to the finite and the infinite.
Yeah.
I love that idea of always remembering, oh, hey, this is the soul's journey, so it's immortal. It just goes on and on. It's infinite. And it's Jason's journey, and it's finite. It will end.
Yeah.
And it's
Mm.
pretty short comparatively.
Yeah, definitely.
So I start my day every day, and I end my day every day with meditation. And that practice is something I've been quite good at. Good job, Jay.
Yep.
For quite many years now. And that has really helped me to anchor my entrance and my exit from this field of consciousness to an idea, which is that this is consciousness. And it's all happening. And I can just see it all happening. I can have some influence on it, but a very small amount.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that meditative practice is right at the front of my spiritual practice.
Yeah. It's an interesting thing, the intentionality piece of intentionally being more close to that edge of the sphere relative to like quote unquote everyday existence and my more micro life as a human, the details of my town and my family and my things that I eat, and just being in my life in a more present and self-aware, situationally aware state. If I really reflect on that, that too feels like a spiritual practice, and I don't always certainly do this. It's not like I'm walking around like a Zen goddess in my fucking kitchen, but sometimes I am. You know what I mean? Like sometimes I'm feeling the water on my hand as I wash a dish, or I'm biting a strawberry and I'm really with that strawberry. So that deep presence, I think, is one of those access points for me that helps me connect to the divine, helps me connect beyond this more micro focused consciousness to what's quote unquote more or out there or whatever, however you want to describe that.
So that reconnection to the beyond, that feeling of a relationship to, like you said, like feeling the water in your hand. I love that description. That's like a beautiful concept of like, are we even present to
Yeah.
like the reality of what's going on around us? And I think I shared about this a little bit on an episode previously, but I want to go into it a little further, and I want to talk about nature, because to me, the anchor in my spiritual experience is nature, and it is constantly visiting nature to allow myself the opportunity to be in awe
Hmm.
of the divine that is nature on a daily basis. Right?
Yeah. I wrote this down just to interject quickly. I on my list, and as we were talking just now, I wrote down awe. I'm like how, what are experiences that can connect us with regularity, with intentionality to this expanded consciousness, this expanded experience that's going around all around us that we are a part of. And it comes through things like nature, but it also comes through bearing witness to love and generosity
Yep.
and deeply feeling gratitude. Like there can be awe experiences both on the micro and the macro.
Yeah, I was thinking about is just looking out my window after a fresh, heavy snowfall and just seeing everything just covered in snow. And I'm just like, wow.
Yeah,
Right? Like,
yes, totally.
wow. Like that is a 6-year-old wow, right? Like the little kid is just
Yes.
glued to the window, like, oh my God, I'm like, look at this. Right. And
Ah,
I don't need to go to the top of a mountain to do that. I can literally like just look out my window, no matter where I am, and the fresh snow covering everything. From that to, I mean, my daily ritual of sunsets and sunrises, right? Like this is a big part of my spiritual practice in my life is
mm,
being present to this simple cycle of the sun coming up and the sun going down. This might seem like, kind of silly or ridiculous to be like spiritual practice, watching the sunrise, watching the sunset. Hell no. Go
mhm.
watch the sunset. Tell me it's not spiritual.
Right.
Some days it's not so grandiose,
Yeah.
it's just, but sometimes, oh my God, like, oh my God. And here oh my God,
Ah,
right?
right.
Yeah.
The sponsor of today's episode is Great Spirit Farm. Yes. Love having Great
Yeah.
Spirit Farm with us, and specifically their ayahuasca microdose tincture. It is a natural MAOI antidepressant and anti-anxiety. Great Spirit Farm describes the feeling as a warm hug. It can help you access deep creativity, flow, intuition, and improve vivid dream recall, which actually has totally been my experience.
So what is exactly in the bottle is the ayahuasca vine itself. So this is a tincture extraction, double extraction tincture that contains the Banisteriopsis caapi vine. Now, the particular vine that this has been extracted from has been growing in Florida now for over 25 years. And the ayahuasca vine does not contain DMT, so that makes this tincture 100% legal in all 50 states.
Yeah, Great Spirit Farm recommends starting with 1 to 3 dropperfuls and increasing your dose gradually from there until you feel the effects. There are no known contradictions with antidepressants, and always check with your doctor and only take as directed.
And what's really great about what Great Spirit Farm is doing is they're making sure that 10% of all the sales are returned to the Shipibo tribe, honoring the medicine's indigenous roots with active reciprocity. Now, if you want to try this tincture out for yourself, you can go to the website that is ayadose.com, AYADOSE.com, and you can enter our discount code TTJ10 to get 10% off your order. Again, that's ayadose.com and all caps TTJ10 to get 10% off your order.
Yeah, that's it. I forget the author of this book, but I will find it and put it in the show notes. But it is a book on awe, and there are expressions that humans make when we are in awe. It's just like our jaw drops, or we say, wow. Like
Wow.
there are very clear experiences and expressions of awe, which again is one path, I think, to the spiritual, to the divine, to the expandedness. It's all that stuff that we've already touched on. But I think it's such a worthwhile just thing to even contemplate, right? Because it's, again, like we center, taking a shower and going to work and going to the grocery store, and all these things are great. And I'm not knocking the microhuman experience, but we don't necessarily center things that could expose us to awe, right? And so I just feel like that's something that I tend to do even in my like sort of type A existence, and this like part of me that really loves doing hard things. Like I keep talking about this keynote speaking stuff, but one of the stories that I tell in it is about the ending of 75 Hard. And that was
Yeah.
that challenge that I did, which is 75 days in a row of this like military style challenge. You do like a ton of stuff, double workouts, diet, gallon of water, listening to Audible book, all this stuff, progress picture. You can't drink alcohol. It's a really difficult thing to do. It's difficult to do anything for 75 days in a row, but this whole list, it's a lot. Anyway, the end of this, have I told this story on the podcast before? Because yeah, so like this is a really poignant story. The end point of how I had this experience of being there for myself, like finishing this thing, but that experience of being there for myself, I only access that like a eruption of emotion, that very much was an awe experience that I accessed because of my willingness to do this hard thing and finish it, right? And so like that's another access to like what I would call a spiritual moment. Like that was a very spiritual, emotional, profound moment for me. And so that's, again, I'm just more like sharing examples of like how to access awe, but also that as an avenue to potential spiritual connection.
So I'm going to jump on that and carry it over here to something that came up earlier, which is kind of like it's the bridge, right? Like how do we, I remember being in my life as a younger person and looking out at the world and kind of going, what's going on here? Like, where is it? Where is God? Where's God? Right? Like, and trying to understand where God is, especially when I lived in the city and I really didn't feel God around me. I feel God around me when I'm out in nature. When I'm in the wilderness, I feel surrounded by God and I feel that energy. And I could say that as a child too. I felt more held by the environment. So nature brings me there, right? Like nature gets me, especially when we see the profundity of just what nature has to offer, whether that's the ocean or giant cliffs or thunderstorms or snowfalls or vast deserts or, forests and giant trees, like just the incredibleness that nature has to offer. And whether it's that or whether we find that bridge within ourselves, like just close my eyes, go inside and find the vast, infinite consciousness that exists inside of our own consciousness.
Yeah.
So Sam Harris shares this piece, and I'll put it in the show notes, and it's called The Paradox of Psychedelics. And now why I want to talk about this, because I could feel God in nature, but I couldn't feel God at church. I didn't feel God at church when I was at church. This doesn't feel like God at all to me. And then when I started exploring psychedelics, I was like, holy shit, this feels like God. This feels like the relationship to spirituality, right? This
Yes.
feels like a shortcut or a bridge to another version of consciousness, which completely opens the door to these ideas. And
Yes.
and I love this piece that Sam shares, The Paradox of Psychedelics, because what he talks about in this piece is how what psychedelics offer us isn't spirituality. It's not spirituality, and that's not what it is. But what it is like the ability to touch it or taste it or smell it or feel it or experience it in enough of a somatic experience where we can then have an idea what it looks, tastes, smells like, so that we can then learn to recognize it for ourselves. Right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Could not agree more with that. For sure, I grew up with church and, no big deal. Definitely had the experience in my spiritual growth and my questioning of this existence and whatnot, where I had periods of feeling like I'm gonna be an atheist, and then
Oh yeah.
that didn't feel right. I was like, I had like really like tearful moments with some of my more religious friends because I wasn't necessarily bought into the religion, but I was like something. I feel something. I remember it very vividly, and was having a conversation with a friend in the car, and I was crying and then having conversations with, I know I've shared about this on a very old episode about our spiritual paths, but like having conversations with my loved ones and specifically with my grandmother. And you mentioned how life and death, birth and death, my aunt died when she was 26. She had a blood
Oh
clot and
wow.
she died suddenly. And it was, of course, unbearable grief for my gram. I was very young. I don't even actually think I was alive. Maybe I was, but not old enough to be a part of this experience. But I asked her about her spiritual life and like why she believes in God. And she told a very touching story. I could cry thinking about it. Oh, I love my gram so much. Um, she shared about this time with her daughter passing and how God, in her mind, like how she framed God for herself, how God came to her. And it was very, very clear to her that God, whatever, however, again, she framed it, was real. And I believed her, even though I did not, and I believe her still. I didn't buy into the religious part, the whatever, but that's okay. You know what I mean? That's okay. It doesn't diminish the power of that spiritual experience for her and informing my quest in myself to answer the questions for myself in my own way.
Yeah. I thank my mother for exposing me to religion and to Christianity, because that early, even though I was resentful for a long time about how confusing the experience was and how it didn't align with my um energy of like what I believe to be true, I was still grateful for like having the seed planted to say, spirituality is an important thing to grow and nurture in ourselves. And honestly, I truly believe that there is a beautiful full circle journey occurring in our Western culture right now, where I think most of the youth of the last, say, 30, 40 years have slowly and steadily, consciously pushed away structured religion and said, thanks, no thanks,
Yeah.
right? And very thoughtfully, even like not even disrespectfully, but just thank you, no thank you, right? Have your religion as you wish, freedom of religion, but it's not for me. And I'm seeing a return in culture where the return to spirituality with removing the structured ideas of dogma
Yep.
around it, where, even when I say the word God, it evokes a construct that's been impressed upon us that comes from primarily from Christianity and Western culture,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
It's a masculine role. It's defined as, a big bearded guy in the sky kind of thing. It immediately relates to Jesus Christ, and this whole story. And to me, when I think about God, it doesn't mean any of that. Like,
Right.
my relationship to what is God does not even remotely reflect the stuff that I was taught as a child about the Bible and about what God looks like. And I'm seeing this cultural shift within our younger people. And I think it's largely due to their open-mindedness and willingness to look at themselves through meditation and through the lens of psychedelics, and to just observe everything around us and just be, like the same concept of like, just take it all in and just look at it for what it is and don't attach to any of it, and just see what I really see here, what sticks out.
Yeah. Yeah. Gosh, I love that perceptible shift
Yeah.
that I feel like we are all feeling, experiencing, sharing in society. I deliberately don't use the word God because of all the barnacles of ideology attached to it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
Like, that's
Yeah.
how it feels to me, where it's like, oh man, do I want to spend my time? Do I need to use a fucking pickaxe to get those barnacles off that word for myself and other people? That's why I use the language of the universe, is that for me, it's connected more to this idea of we are universally connected. And I know even the language of like one love, and that is almost overused and cliche now as well, right? But I feel like it is what you're pointing to is important, is that no matter what language you choose, how does that feel to you? What does it mean to you? You know what I mean? And how we are connecting to and touching our spiritual experience when we use that kind of language, you
Well,
know?
yeah. So here's the thing. I grew up praying to God, right?
Mm,
So part of my spiritual practice as a young man was prayer, and prayer has returned to my life. It is something that I do practice again as an adult, but it's not in the same context. When I was young, I would pray from a fearful place where it was imposed upon me that the idea is that I need to be like asking for a force outside of myself to take me under its wing, to be responsible for me, to look out for me, for miracles to happen, for some outside force or energy to save me, right? That I'm outside of the position of power in my life to make the changes that I want to see happen. And I think that this was the big defining moment. Similar to you, I grew up monotheistic, fearful of a single God. And then when my mother died, I was like, fuck you, God. Fuck
yes.
you, man. You fucking suck. And I'm like, now I don't believe in you at all. You're a piece of shit, because there's no
Right.
God would treat a child this way. Right.
Right. Right.
And so I was like, atheist, right? Atheist.
Yep.
I don't believe in God. There is no God. And then after some time, I'm too smart for that. I look around and I'm like, yeah, I had some LSD. And then I'm like, oh, maybe I don't know what I don't know.
Yeah,
And so
exactly.
I switched to agnostic,
Me
right?
too. Me
Yeah.
too.
So the pushback of like no God to like, okay, maybe I just don't know what's going on. And
Yep.
I'll be okay with that for some time. And moving through life, the next thing that greatly influenced me was psilocybin. And psilocybin started to be like, hey, there's some bunch of stuff in here that you might be able to interpret if you keep taking a look through this lens, you know? And I started to be more and more like, maybe there is a God. Maybe there is a God. Maybe there's something else on the other side of this. And maybe I'm not comfortable with that, or I don't know how to understand it. And I don't have a book to read that's going to tell me how it is. But maybe there's something behind all this. And
Yeah.
then I'll be straight up. Then I tried DMT. And then my whole life changed. And then I was like, oh, that's not an accident. That's not the proverbial 747 self-assembling in the junkyard because a tornado came through. This whole version of reality didn't just pop into existence. This is intelligent design, right? And the idea of intelligent design evokes that there is a designer, right?
Right.
And
Right.
the designer, for me, when I first encountered DMT, I'm like, well, there's obviously a designer to this, right? Like whatever's going on here, even though I can't understand it, even though it's mind-bogglingly complicated and beautiful and amazing and terrifying all at the same time, it's obviously intelligently designed because it is immaculately, it's just inconceivably complex and simple and incredible. And that was a line in the sand for me where my whole life's journey switched to one of going, okay, now when I prayed as a little boy and I sat by my bedside, I would kneel on the ground and I would put my hand on my hands and I would put my hands on the side of my bed, just like the freaking Hallmark card. Okay. And when I would pray to God, I would pray into a black void where I didn't know who or what I was praying to. And I was thought that I should be afraid. And now when I pray, now when I meditate, now when I wow in nature, and now when somebody is born or now when somebody dies, now I know what I'm praying to. And now I know where this intelligent design resides and how it influences and affects and creates everything.
Yeah. How would you say that? Because that's incredible, right? I mean, the place, I've never done DMT as a straight experience like Bufo. I've never experienced that. Obviously, ayahuasca is my experience with that compound
Yeah,
and
which is DMT.
which is
Yeah.
DMT. That's
Yeah.
right. And connecting to that intelligent design sort of awareness, that vast complexity and vast simplicity, the mind-boggling nature of that. That's where I've touched that for myself. But I'm curious, other than what you just described about now you know what you're praying to, how has it changed how you exist? Has it?
Yeah. Very, very, very much so. So what's happened in my life has been a steady shift of my position in relationship to spirituality from being dogmatically opposed to it as an idea to 100% completely embracing and embodying the daily practice rituals, the weekly, the monthly, the lunar, the solar, the seasonal practices that are spirituality in my being. So from being staunchly opposed to being, oh, this is actually the way.
It's powerful.
Yeah.
It's powerful. Oh, man. You know, I do agree, certainly. I'm like, I'm laughing even thinking this. Oh, it's a weird contemplation because for me, I am with you in that my experience with psychedelic medicines is so profoundly connected to my opening up of my spiritual self. I think other avenues do that also, but for me, it's been a super crucial one. And I do think it is in part to how like caked up I had been in this version of myself, right? In this like in these strong suits, right? I my
Caked up.
first
Tell me what caked up means.
yeah, like meaning like this fucking hard ass casing around my actual soft center.
Oh,
I
your
sort of
armor. Yeah.
yeah, armor for
Yeah. Yeah.
sure, and just like habits, and just like this like building up the concept of a barnacle but not alive is sort of really because they're so hard to get off. When they attach, it's like it's really, really intense. And I describe one of my earlier ayahuasca experiences this way, where it felt like she had to just like pummel me, right? To like beat and I'm not in a bad, mean way, beat the like complete shit out of me to break that hard stuff that had built up around my core, loving, soft self center.
It's a calcification.
Spiritual body, right? Because my spiritual body, I just for so long never accessed my spiritual body. It just never happened. Didn't happen in church. It would occasionally happen through experiences of awe, but I did not frame it that way in my mind, right? There was the one of the first spiritual experiences I can recount in my fully calcified version was in 2007. I finished reading the book Eat, Pray, Love by Elizabeth Gilbert. Totally recommend it. It was very poignant for me at that point in my life. I'm sitting laying down on a crappy couch in a ski lodge or a mountain lodge in New Zealand at Mount Cook. And I'm alone. No one else is in this lodge. It's just me and this couch finishing this book. And I had what I count and recount as my first quote unquote spiritual experience. As an adult, that was other than the like crying and realizing there's more. That's like one of those. But this was the first experience of like my head popping off my neck and being like, whoa, like spirituality and God, quote unquote, rushing in and having that physical, emotional experience to boot. And so it, that helped start to open me up, but like, that's a thing. This like, I can't access it because all this shit and all this stuff is just on me,
Totally. And it's difficult because honestly, the vast majority of our culture is not, what's the word I even want to use here? Like softening us in any way towards this idea. If anything, it's hardening us and numbing us. Like I have all these visions in my mind of like Matrix style beings trapped inside of an idea, living a false reality, and we're just being pumped full of drugs of like, don't look out here, watch TV, eat your fast food, go do your job, like just all this stuff that's like, I mean, I want to go back to what I was talking about earlier. Okay. I want to go back to the rainforest because I was in the rainforest earlier this summer. I spent a bunch of days just being in the forest and spending time. And after being in the forest for a number of days, when I returned to what I'm going to have to put quotes around is reality,
right?
I was flabbergasted, like fucking flabbergasted. I was just like, this isn't reality. I knew because an hour earlier, I had a wow experience where I burst into laughter. Looking at the ocean. I looked at the ocean and I was in awe of how incredibly beautiful the ocean was, right? And I was just guffaw, just, oh my God, this is amazing. And I am not on drugs. I am not high. I'm just in awe of the stunning beauty that is nature. And I've been around these beautiful old growth forests, these trees, these amazing trees, and rivers and stones and skies and snows. And I roll down the highway, this man-made highway, and I pull into this casino gas station stop. And I'm pummeled with advertising for gambling, alcohol, nicotine, gasoline, and sex.
Yep.
It was just this, like, all of this stuff. I was just like, excuse me, if we just stop being human for a second, like if everybody just stopped and sat still, okay, and stillness, like Israel was talking about in the previous episode, if we would just sit still for a second, all this stuff just goes away.
Yes.
Right? It just goes away. It just doesn't even exist, right? Like gambling is just a behavior that goes away. That's gone.
Goes away. Yep.
It goes away. Nicotine, unless you're like seeking it and selling it and like pushing it, it goes away. Yep. Right? What's real is the tides. What's real is the sun coming up and going down. What's real is the rain falling. What's real is the trees growing. All these systems are going to continue on their own without us having any involvement in them, right?
Correct.
We don't have anything to do with it, and it is 100% animate. It is just existing. It's completely animate. And to me, this is the definition of spirituality. I'm like, does it happen like magic? Is it literally magic? Like, is it literally just happening all around you and you have to do nothing to create it? Then it is God. It is the animate force of all that is. And all the other things that we're being targeted with, of bright colors and sugar and like all these things, these aren't real. These are make-believe stories that are being told to us, that we think we want. But I pulled into this gas station and I was like, I just want to turn around and go back in the woods. I want to get away from this, because the people, and I saw the heaviness. I saw the weight that everybody was carrying on their shoulders, and the anger and the frustrations and just all the energies. And I'm like, wow, like if you just drive over there, just go over there and just walk up that road into the forest there, none of this is actually going on over there. This isn't real. This is a make-believe story.
Mm-hmm.
So I really wanted to pull us back to this, because, ayahuasca or psilocybin or DMT aside, just go sit in the woods.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to add to this because you said something earlier. Thank you for that share, because I think that's super powerful and a really genuinely pragmatic, useful place for people to start, right? Is this like connection to nature. Like that's just a really good place that anyone can start, But you mentioned, and we were talking about this notion of softening and how the world as it's set up, that's definitely been a thread for me in my quote unquote healing journey, spiritual journey, is this getting more practiced and surrendered to this softening experience, right? Like I think as human beings, it can feel like it dangerous. Like if we soften, if we expose our soft center, then we are theoretically, perceptibly in danger. We are more vulnerable. But I would actually contest that from a spiritual standpoint, that is actually the strongest place we can be, going back to one of your core values of love, of like, it sounds super cliche, but when we are really spiritually deeply connected to love, not attachment, not any of that stuff, but like allowing that softness to be, to like to allow, to own that is truth in ourselves, then like oof, Like it's felt by both us and others. And I really do think that softer place is the strongest place we can actually live.
I completely agree. This quote came up, actually it was in that Tim Ferriss and Elizabeth Gilbert episode, and Elizabeth Gilbert said, the most relaxed person in the room, wins the fight. And I think of the martial artist who is just doing nothing except only what's necessary, and otherwise is absolutely like water, just non-reactive. No, there's nothing happening that doesn't need to be happening. And this most relaxed person, to me, that's the softening, right? Like being hard and rigid is not being relaxed, right? Being relaxed is allowing everything to be, just allowing it all to be, and only moving that subtle amount that's needed to avoid, something that might be a danger to you, or to move towards something that might be more graceful to you to be receiving, right?
Entirely agree.
Yeah.
This is certainly a topic that could expand into many hours of conversation.
Oh man, we haven't even talked about so many things.
We haven't
so
even
many things.
Scratched the surface as per usual. I think we just keep this as a potential recurring topic because but everybody listening, seriously, what comes up for you listening to this conversation? What would you add? What would you share? Like, let us know. Seriously, reach out.
In the comments, share in the comments. Let's get a conversation going around this, because honestly, I think this is the conversation. There is no other more important conversation like than this one. This is the one conversation that is truly of service of the highest level to humankind, to our journeys as individuals and collectively as a species, as a consciousness. Yeah.
Mic drop. I love it. I love you. In the absolute wonderful, beautiful practice of gratitude, thank you guys all for listening. Jay, as always, thank you for being such a wonderful space for curiosity to blossom and allowing me to be the soft version of myself or the hard version of myself. Like, I really just get so much out of being in connection with you, my friend.
My favorite topic. We could talk about this all day.
I know.
Yes.
Well, right on, peeps. Like we said, keep us posted, and we love you.
Love you.
Thank you, everyone, seriously, for listening, for spending your valuable, valuable time, energy, and heart with us. Every bit of it makes a difference.
Yeah, thank you. We would love it if you could show your support for the show by subscribing on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts, or follow us on Instagram. You can always click the like button, leave us a comment, or share an episode with somebody directly.
Like we mentioned, every month we host integration coaching circles. So much good work is happening there. You are invited to join us. Go to trustthejourney.today/integration. The Trust the Journey family includes these integration coaching circles and our private Facebook group where we connect and support each other. Join us by going to our website, trustthejourney.today, and click the orange Patreon button.
Yeah, thanks. It's your support and engagement that make the show possible. Thank you. We're here to connect with you. Feel free to DM us anytime on Instagram. We're at trustthejourney.today. Thank you. We love you.
We love you.
Keep laughing, keep loving, and keep trusting the journey.